and Jackie Rowe Adams.
Yes.
Mr. Paganias, so minutes approved. Now I will turn the agenda over to Linda D. Hart, Vice President of HHC's Finance Corporate Reimbursement Division, to provide an update.
Thank you. As a reminder, Capital Corporation was created to receive the system's healthcare revenue.
Sure.
I'm so sorry, it was me. That was you? Yes.
So just again, as a reminder, the Capital Corporation was created to receive the system's healthcare revenues in security for our bond issuances. We meet semi-annually. There is no business that comes before the Capital Corporation. However, we use this as an opportunity to provide an update on our debt finance program. So looking at our outstanding bond portfolio, we currently have outstanding bonds of $428.5 million. Of that, $118.3 million, or 27.6%, is in tax-exempt variable rate bonds, and $310.2 million, or 72.4%, is in tax-exempt fixed-rate bonds. Our variable rate bonds are supported by letters of credit provided by TD Bank and JP Morgan. We have, with the TD Bank letter of credit, the Series B and C bonds, which have a final maturity in February of 2031. Our letter of credit with TD was recently extended through September of 2027. The JP Morgan letter of credit covers the D&E variable rate bonds, which have a final maturity of February 2026, and credit runs through that entire period. As of the time of preparing this statement, the last reset for the variable rate debt was ranged from 1.85% to 2.01%. That was as of January 10th. Through the end of last year, the rate had been at 3.8% range, 3.8 to 3.81%. But as an update, since this was prepared as of yesterday, the interest rate was reset at 4.65%, ranging up to 4.74%. So there has been some considerable volatility in the interest rates recently, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next page. But with that said, to date, we estimate that having the variable rate debt has saved us $74 million. On the next page, we provide a little bit of a historical view of that variable rate debt. So you can see the blue line on the bottom is the actual rate that we're paying on that debt. And you can see that for the recent period, there has been quite a lot of movement in that rate. And it's affected by a number of things, including, geopolitical occurrences, the activity with respect to federal interest rates, and any number of things, activity in the borrowing market. The top line on this graph, the orange line, shows the spread of our rate to SIFMA, which is an index rate typically used related to tax-exempt debt. So that line is sort of a measure of the competitiveness of our debt that we hew relatively close to SIFMA. Turning to the next page, we have this is the full history of our issuance of debt. We currently have, as we noted, $428.5 million outstanding. We have, over the life of our debt program, issued several refinancings or refundings, and we estimate that has saved us just under $145 million over the life of the program. I'll note here also that you can see from the history that we have for a long time had a pattern of borrowing on an average of, say every 3 to 4 years. But we had quite a long lull from 2013 to our last borrowing, which closed in 2021. So our debt load is relatively low now at the $428.5 million. Turning to the next page. In our last borrowing, we included a new construction fund of roughly $100 million. This is the status of that fund. To date, we have spent down $78.3 million and have a balance, including interest earnings on the deposit, of $23.8 million. And we'll talk on the coming pages more about the status of that and expected timelines. So as noted, spending through December was 78.3 million in total. That included 56.3 million for infrastructure, and we have roughly $23.9 million left to be spent on infrastructure projects. The spending since our last report for infrastructure was $16.3 million compared to a projection at that time of 29.1 million due date. You'll see how that projection has changed. We've extended, or the Facilities Development Department has extended the projected timeline to spend these remaining funds from June of 2024 through June of 2025. However, they are expecting that they'll be substantially complete on the spending by December of this year. I think they've given themselves a longer run-out time to account for project closeout, which is very typical that you have a small amount of bills related to construction projects that take several months to close out following the end of the project. With respect to equipment, the total spending was $22 million, and those projects were fully completed as of December 22. So this, again, is just a reminder of the planned use of that borrowing. It was, again, roughly 75% for infrastructure and 25% for equipment. It was spread across the SILS system. The projects were selected based on sort of known work in queue at the time that we made the decision to borrow. The borrowing was part of a refunding that we did, so there were some restrictions related to useful life of projects that could be selected for this new money because it had to work with the refunding that we were structuring. So that placed some constraints on the project selection that I think has affected some of the timing ability on the spending side. Turning to the next page, we have again the flow of cash flow that's projected for these the rest of the project fund. So the bars here, the dark blue bars, are actual spending through December of this year from the point that we started tracking this on a projection basis in January of last year. The light blue bars are the current projected spending. And as we noted, there is a run out through June of 2025, but you can see that the bulk of the spending happens during this calendar year. The dashed lines provide you some history on the projections, the previous projections for this spending. So when we started tracking this in December of 2022, the red line was the projected completion expectation. We revised that in June when we last reported to the orange line, where, at that point we had hoped that the spending would be completed by June of 2024. And we're now at this extended timeline, which, we think is more realistic. It reflects, again, the priorities of the Facilities Department and their capacity. They have been strained, as you know, by several emergency projects that have also contributed to some of this delay. Turning to the next page, we're reporting on, separate from our bond borrowing, the board has authorized us to borrow for equipment loan or short-term borrowing, not to exceed $120 million at any time. Under that program, we have executed 3 borrowings for a total across the life of those borrowings of just under $160 million. Again, never exceeding 120 outstanding at any point in time. We have completely paid off the first 2 loans that were borrowed under this program, one with JPMorgan Chase and one with Citi, both for $60 million. And we currently have $36.4 million remaining outstanding under a loan with JPMorgan that we executed in June of 2022 to refund some existing NYPA loans for boiler projects. On the next page, we have a little more detail about the project funds related to our earlier borrowing under that program. So for Citibank, again, that was a $60 million loan. It fully matured. It was in 2 components, a variable rate piece and a revolving piece. The first $30 million fully matured in November of 2022. The second piece of that loan fully matured in October of 2023. So this loan is now fully paid down, but we do have a small balance remaining unspent and continue to work with facilities development to draw those funds down. Turning to the next page, we have the status of the JP Morgan Chase loan, also fully drawn down. So this loan matured in, I'm sorry, this is the current NIPA loan. So this loan is scheduled to mature in June of 2037. It's a fixed rate loan with an interest rate of 2.64%. We have an outstanding balance on the loan of $36.4 million. There is no construction fund related to this or project fund related to this, as this was a refunding of Ebola projects that were already completed. Finally, we have reports on arbitrage rebate related to some of our borrowing. So as we noted, the Citibank revolving loan that was executed in 2018 fully matured in October of 2023. We are required for tax-exempt borrowing to evaluate whether the proceeds on the borrowing have exceeded, excuse me, the bond yield. So at the final maturity, we have a final arbitrage analysis that is conducted by our bond counsel that showed that for this loan, we did have an excess of roughly $12,000, which we have reported and repaid to the IRS. And finally, an update on, we previously reported on the arbitrage rebate report for our 2013 Series A bonds, which matured in February of 2023. At that time, there was no rebate liability associated with the bond through final maturity, but there had, over the course of that bond, you are required to do that analysis every 5 years. At the 2018 analysis, there was a rebate liability due of $581,000, so that we were due a refund related to that as of the final maturity. We filed for that and have received it. So that concludes the report. I'm happy to take any questions. Yes.
I love it. And I'm just wondering if we were to rate ourselves in terms of financial management, where would we fall?
A+.
Refer to Dr. Katz on that. I give all the credit to Pauline Locke, who really manages this program, and I just get to report on it.
No, like,
I mean,
I work with Linda. Linda effort is very needed as well.
You're very humble. I think it's, incredible given where we are, the environment we're in, that this looks so well and well managed and projected use of funds and meeting the goals and so forth. It's just really good. Thank you.
Echo Barbara. Okay. And just a quick question on the projects. When you go through the projects that you have funded, or you're able to fund through this, right? And then the ones, I guess I'm thinking about the cutoff point. This is how much you can afford with that, and then I'm trying to understand the priority, how the ones that didn't get funded, where would they fall?
Well, we have, quite an extensive list of projects that we are seeking to fund. We have the larger part of our capital program is being funded by the city. So we have over a 10-year capital plan, roughly, I'm going to say $2.2 billion of capital scheduled. That still doesn't meet our needs. We have quite extensive needs beyond that. We are going to be applying for some state capital grant funding that was made available through the previous budget. I think we're going to continue to look at additional borrowing. But the prioritization, really happens in conjunction with senior management and our facilities development team. So they have undertaken, and we unfortunately didn't think to bring them here today, and they could speak to this much better. But they have undertaken a number of planning projects. They're looking at implementing, sort of comprehensive master planning across the system. I think that's been done to some degree on some campuses. So there's a constant running list of priorities. We have, many billions of dollars of needs that we could accommodate over that 10-year plan beyond what we have funded. But we do tend to identify our critical list on top of that. We continue to discuss that with the city, and we'll prioritize that as we have additional funds of our own available.
Linda, do you think it'd be fair to say that this process is sort of independent of that process?
Yes.
This process is a source of money,
Yeah.
which we put toward our other sources of capital money, which might be state, it might be city. And then from the different sources of money, we draw out, as is appropriate, some projects can only be funded with a particular source of money, or a borough president or a city council person will give us a sum of money for a specific project, but we view this just as a pipeline funding. And the goal here is to make sure we use it appropriately and responsibly in the ways that you and your colleagues do, so.
Yes.
Thank you. I should have said earlier that Sally Hernandez Piñero and Frida Wan are with us on a listening capacity. So, great work. I mean, I second what Barbara said on this, and you hear the previous meetings like that we have had, the plans, and it's nice to see them how they're executed. And wanted to say that. Jackie, were you gonna?
No, I was saying you're right.
Yeah.
Well, the clarity is amazing to me. I've been listening to budgets for years, and the kind of language that is used. Thank you again.
Thank you.
So, hearing that, then, is there any old or new business to come before the board? There's no further business. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.